Another storm came into the west today, and there's still a few more to go as this unending weather pattern continues. A cold front will be heading east with rain, and there will be areas that will see severe weather out of this. We will talk about that, the weekend, the long range, and anything else you want to talk about right here tonight on the Joe and Joe Weather Show. Brought to you by Omni True Value Hardware at 1226 North Wellwood Avenue in West Babylon, New York, in southwest Suffolk County on Long Island. Long Island's largest rock salt source. And why wouldn't they be? Because they haven't had anybody really use any rock salt this winter. But it's all there if and when the pattern does change. It is going to change. Whether it changes to something you like is another matter. But they still have everything in stock: snowblowers, shovels, spreaders, batteries, flashlights, generators, you name it. They got it at Omni. 631-756-1125. Can you find better prices in town? No, I don't think so. And the website is
OmniTrueValue.com, Joe. And I'm beginning to wonder. I'm beginning to wonder. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I hear you fine.
Oh, okay. Because when you said Joe,
it
sounded like
no. I was delaying for time. I'm trying to get your face on the screen.
Here's the 11th of January, and yesterday, Dr. Judah Cohen wrote, as I write today's blog, this is off of Twitter now, He wrote, as I write today's blog, the predictions for the mid-tropospheric circulation with increasing high-latitude blocking, especially near Alaska, and deepening troughing in eastern North America, could potentially yield the most active midwinter pattern in the eastern U.S. since 2014 and 2015. I read that and I said, I looked at the calendar, I said, now wait a minute. Is it January 11th or is it April Fool's Day?
No, well, but hold on, just 1 second. Since he alluded to the winter of 14-15, that winter up until the 20th of January, very little. We had a little bit of snow in December. I think we had like 2 or 3 inches in December, but that was pretty much it. Very little in the way of anything was going on. It wasn't particularly cold. Wasn't particularly warm either. But that was the year that we had a typhoon in the Pacific that recurved, energized this huge upper low near the Aleutians, and set the ball rolling for what was. It started with the half blizzard, and then it just continued through February and March. So, the patterns going into both of those are decidedly different. I think it's interesting that Dr. Cohen says this. I'm not waving the surrender flag at all, but I could certainly understand the skepticism.
Well, I looked. I mean, I've looked at 10 millibars. I've looked at 500 millibars. I've looked out to 378 hours or whatever. And quite honestly, Joe, I guess I'm not. I mean, he obviously studies long-range patterns and the troposphere and whatever much more than I do. But I honestly cannot see anything remotely resembling. And I've been hearing other websites too talking about the big change that's coming after mid-month toward the big ridge popping up in the west and the trough in the east and much colder in the east. I don't see it. I honestly do not see it. So I guess I'm El Dumbo.
No. I think. Look, the pattern is going to, as I said last night, and I'll repeat it again. The pattern is going to change. That's going to happen. The setup in the west is going to flip. And the setup in the east is going to change. It just may not change to what you think is a favorable pattern for snow and cold. I mean, it doesn't necessarily. It's not one or the other. I mean, we might wind up evolving into a pattern in the east that is, pretty mundane. I don't know, and you don't know. I don't know.
Yeah,
I understand your perspective. He has kind of gone to the other end of the spectrum here in terms of possibilities. But you know what? He understands. He understands what goes on in the stratosphere far more than I do. Okay, I'm
Either one of us.
or either one of us, or maybe both of us put together. So I'm going to give him the benefit of the doubt. I'm not going to criticize the forecast. I'm not going to support it. I'm just going to sort of sit back and wait. But I do think the pattern's going to change, and I don't and it's going to change uh, around it's going to start changing later next week. It's going to probably take a week to sort of play itself out to see what we wind up with, and let's just let things happen. Let's just watch and let things happen, and let's see where it takes us. Because they're really, what are we going to do? Sit here and say we know definitively what's going to come of this? You and I both can't. We know
No.
we can't do that. Nobody can do that. And anybody on the chat board that's watching that already has decided that there's going to be a flake or an ice pellet for the rest of the winter. I mean, that's based on pure emotion, and probably at some level pure anger. But I mean, it will get to a point. I'll tell you this: it will get to a point if we don't see if we don't see measurable snow by, I would say, the 10th day of February. I am going to root for then I'm going to turn myself around and I'm going to root for no snow to fall so that we could go completely snowless for the winter, because that's never happened. It almost happened,
No.
but it's never happened.
Yeah. I'm looking back at weather records now. I haven't had a chance to really dig my hands into them, but I've been up here in Putnam Valley 21 years, and I'm working now on my second snowblower. We've had quite a few rough winters up here with a lot of snow. When I speak about a lot, I'm talking about, 60, 70, maybe even approaching 80 inches. I have not used my snowblower once. And I asked Renata, I said, have we ever gone this long without having? Now, we have had one snowfall, and it was maybe, he said, an inch, maybe. That was back on December the 4th.
All right.
But it was hardly anything. I mean, like, it was gone within a few hours. So, and I didn't certainly need to pull out the snow blower for that. But I really now, it's the 11th of January. I've yet to use the snow blower. Looking at what I've seen on the mid and long range, I don't honestly see needing to use that snow blower for another couple of more weeks at least.
All right.
And that would take us all the way to the end, almost to the end of January. It's amazing.
I much rather, as always, I'd rather have models not show snowstorms than show them. Because when they show them in the long range, 99 times out of 100 they don't happen. And if they do happen, they don't happen in the way that the models initially pick up on it. Let's just see. Let's watch in the coming days. What and in the next 10 days or so, how this all pans out. And we don't really have much choice, do we?
No, we don't.
Okay. Well, Steve Lapointe, bless him, sent me. So for those of you who espouse, I see the comments that are on the show, that people watch, that when they don't watch live and they leave comments on YouTube, and you get all sorts of, most of the comments are sane. There are a few of them that are way off the deep end, and of course all the porn bot links are taken out, thankfully. But here are the 10 least snowiest winters in New York City. Okay,
Right.
we'll start with number one, which was 72-73, 2.8 inches. Okay, and that is 73 inches fewer than the heaviest accumulation recorded in New York City, which was in 95-96 when they had 76 inches for the season. 2001, 2002, 3.5. Now, for those of you who think that this has never happened before, 1918, 1919, okay? And that was 3.8 inches. 2019, 2020, 4.8 inches. 1900 to 1901, 5.1 inches, okay? 1931, winter of 31, 32, 5.3 inches. Number 7 is the winter of 97, 98, 5.5, and all of that, by the way, came on Uh,
Not all of it. Not all
Virtual
of it.
five of those inches came.
Five.
Five of
Right.
those inches came after the first day of spring. Um, 2008, 11, 2012, 7.4. Tied for ninth place is 1988-89 and 1877-78, 8.1 inches. And number 10 is 1950 to 1951, 9.3 inches. So you can see that the smattering of these top 10 uh, cover, they're peppered all through the history of snow measurements in New York City, which go back to 1869. So there's nothing new here, okay? Just to be clear, there's nothing new here. It's not weather control. It's not climate change. It's not. It's just part of the normal cycle. And the other thing I would throw out is that if you go look statistically in New York City, I think it was 64% of winters have below normal snowfall, below average snowfall. If you use 30 inches as the average, 64%. So you have a higher probability of seeing below average snowfalls in any given winter versus above average. A slightly higher probability of seeing below.
I
And that's
mentioned
just the way it is.
I mentioned in New York the that 3-inch rule, which only really works for the immediate New York area. It doesn't work for eastern Long Island or in areas up in the Hudson Valley. But for whatever reason, for whatever quirkiness, it seems to work where if you get less than 3 inches of snow in the month of December, that ultimately means like 85 to 90% of the time that New York City will have below normal snowfall. And in fact, in many cases, less than half the normal complement of snow. In other words, if you get like a trace or 0 inches or 1 inch or 2 inches of snow, there's a good chance that you're going to see probably less than 15 inches of snow in New York City for that entire year. What is interesting is that I've also looked at that, in terms of months, and it appears, Joe, that the months where the most snow falls in those type of years, where you have not so much in December and you have below normal for the rest of the winter, the months where the most snow falls is either January or March. There
Yes.
isn't really all that much that happens in February. Now, if you assume that, and if we don't get much in January of this year, we may have to wait until March for a significant snowfall.
Maybe.
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 Maybe. So
Let's see. You'll have to the 31st of January. So all it'll take is one snowfall in those last 10 days or so, and we can go on to the next discussion. So on that note, welcome to everybody on the chat board and those of you lurking in the background. Welcome to tonight's Joe and Joe Weather Show. Subscribe to my YouTube channel, and you can get notifications if you turn them on for the Joe and Joe Weather Show, which is on Monday through Thursday at 7:35, Sundays at 11 a.m. And if there's a storm going on, we do a show on a Friday or do a show on a Saturday. But on those 2 days, we usually take a little bit of time off because
and
doing a live show 5 days a week and going an hour plus almost every night, your brain gets fried after a while.
And Lindy Lou on the chat board earlier this evening mentioned the fact that a large flock of robins have arrived in southern New Hampshire today. Looks like spring. And I think that was followed up a bit later by somebody on the chat board. I think it was Tim Veltman. Yeah, Tim Veltman said robins are here too, but they're the winter robins. Some don't migrate. Well, I should say most don't migrate. And about 10 years ago, Joe, I did a 2-part series on climate change and global warming for News 12. And in part 2, I went up to the Mohonk Mountain House, which has a cooperative observing station going back to 1893, and also an observer who takes records for phrenology. In other words, for bird migrations and plants opening up as the seasons progress. And he told me, the expert, I forget his name, his first name was John, and he said, because of global warming, we have noticed over the last couple of decades that robins simply don't migrate anymore. Robins and song sparrows. I wonder if Birder Lady is on tonight. Maybe she can verify this. But robins and song sparrows here in the Northeast don't migrate anymore. They are now year-round residents because, according to the phrenologist up at the Mohawk House, it's just gotten so much milder over the last couple of decades that they don't bother migrating anymore. They just simply stay put and stay where they are. I guess that's what Tim Veltman is referring to when he says the winter robins, some don't migrate. Well, actually, Tim, I think they don't migrate, period, anymore. And also talking about plants that are now opening or budding or blooming 2 to 3 weeks earlier than they used to in the spring, again, because of the increased or the warmer temperatures that have occurred, presumably because of climate change. So there.
So there. Johnny Quest is the first hit of the tip jar tonight. Thanks, Johnny Quest. He says, Joe, there have been many times that he gets more snow where he is in the mountains of northwestern Virginia in March than he does in January. So, we got a long way to go before we get to February, let alone March. So why don't we start off with what's going on in the West? And I have a really cool full disc satellite. I don't bring up the full disc very often, Joe, but you could see on this how two storms just dominate the entire weather picture out in the western U.S. and in the Pacific. I mean, those are two wrapped up animals out there, and those have to play through in the West before those two, and I think there's one more after that have to play through in the next 7 days before the change gets underway.
And hopefully it'll be a change for the better. I mean, I see that the Climate Prediction Center is stating that a change is coming, that the ridge is going to build. I noticed on the 8 to 14 day outlook that they put out today, Joe, that they actually have below normal precipitation for California. They are stressing that the end is in sight for California, but I presume that it'll come to an end after these next two Pacific systems move in and bring their own share of wind, snow, sleet, rain, or whatever.
And by the way, you could look at the lightning strikes out in the Pacific. Around the first low, yeah, there's even some with the second low way out in the Central Pacific, south of the Aleutians. I mean, this is just really these are impressive systems here.
Very dynamic.
Yep, and they're just driving the whole weather pattern everywhere we look. And now back to the U.S. view, and I got to give it a refresh. I was saying yesterday, I don't know what the ghost people did, but they used to just automatically update while I left the browser open, and now they don't. Sometimes they do, and sometimes they don't. The next storm system. Now this is one of those western storms that is where the energy got kicked eastward, and you could see the swirl moving across southern Kansas, and the comma-shaped signature here as it heads eastward. So that's a rather robust shortwave that is moving east, and it's also going to be triggering off some severe weather risks going forward. Meanwhile, we've got some high clouds moving through the northeast at the moment. There's a bit of a warm front that's setting up ahead of that storm system coming out of Kansas, and that's going to begin the process of taking us to some wet weather up and down the eastern seaboard for later Thursday into early Friday. And then the next surge is coming in to the west. This was, I'll refresh this in a minute, but just to show you what's going on in California. So this was at between 1 and 2 o'clock this afternoon, where there were patches of heavy rains, especially around San Francisco, and then on northward. I think that's I-5 that you see there, that highway that runs through California from south to north, and then more is coming into the northwest. So we'll give it a refresh. And yeah, indeed, on the new radar, just about all of Northern California, the northern half of California, is dealing with the next surge of rain. Meanwhile, we've got the rotation in Kansas. There's snow on the northern edge of this as it moves eastward. And we're starting to see some showers breaking out from eastern Ohio, northern West Virginia, down to the Washington, D.C., Baltimore area. That is the warm front, I think, that is setting up that will be moving northward during the day on Thursday.
Now we may see a few renegade or spotty showers as early as tomorrow morning. I think maybe 7, 8, 9, 10 o'clock. Nothing really to put much in the rain gauges around the region. It really is not going to be until probably at the end of the day tomorrow, or more likely tomorrow night, that we'll begin to see some significant or notable shower activity. But don't be surprised if you get a little wet during the course of the day tomorrow. I do want to stress the word little, and that will be, again, with the approaching warm front.
We have winter weather advisories up for northeastern New York, much of Vermont, New Hampshire, except the southeast, and some of Maine, while the northern half of Maine is under a winter storm watch. So at least Maine is trying to do its job of making sure that winter is going on somewhere in the Northeast. We have a little scattering of winter weather advisories from northeastern Colorado into eastern Wyoming, and also in the western half of Colorado. We've got a peppering of winter weather advisories and a little winter storm warning in there. In California, it's wind advisories from about halfway up from Los Angeles to San Francisco northward. We have flash flood watches up in Northern California. We've got winter weather advisories up I love when they put them up for the Sierra Nevadas. You get the winter weather advisories for 50 to 60 inches of snow. I just think that's amazing. And also some winter weather advisories up in northern Washington. And we've got some severe, though we don't have any severe weather watches up now. There's some red flag warnings up in parts of West Texas, and also some high wind warnings up in northwest Texas, southeast Colorado, and northeastern New Mexico. The Storm Prediction Center, let's go to today. So this is for tonight, and it'll be more overnight. A marginal risk from northeastern Arkansas into western Kentucky, western Tennessee, southernmost Indiana and Illinois, and southeastern Missouri. And then for the daytime tomorrow, we've got a slight risk for Alabama, most of Georgia, western South Carolina, southeastern North Carolina, and a fairly large area of tornado risk that extends all the way up through Kentucky and most of Tennessee, and then kind of arcs its way up northeastward through western South Carolina and into parts of central North Carolina. So a little bit of severe weather action on day 2, and on day 3, nothing to speak of other than general thunderstorms in parts of north and central Florida, and also on the west coast. So they have. Let me see. Did they? Yeah, they have general thunderstorms, Joe,
yes.
reaching the Hudson Valley, southern New England, southernmost New England, the Hudson Valley, northern New Jersey for Thursday into Friday. I mentioned that there could be a thunderstorm in the mix with that cold front coming through.
It's possible. I mean, it's certainly, Friday morning, it'll be like almost like an occlusion of sorts just to the west by about daybreak. And I suppose if we're going to see any kind of convection, we might see it, either very early on Friday morning, or maybe, right around the time the rush hour begins. Because again, it's the most of the heavy action, or most of the showery rains from this impending system will come more likely tomorrow night, not necessarily during the daylight hours of Thursday, but probably holding off the main batch until after dark tomorrow night.
And here's WPC. Let's do the three-day rainfall amounts here, or liquid. Well, we actually could say almost for most areas it's rainfall, but some of this is snow. But in the east, it's basically a half to 3/4 of an inch of liquid, a bit more up in Maine, especially along the coast of Maine, where we're talking about an inch and a half plus, and also up along the St. Lawrence River Valley, where we're seeing an inch and a half plus there. Half to 3/4 of an inch in the Ohio Valley and the Appalachians, down into the southeast. Tails off a bit as you get to the coast. And of course, on the west coast, the 3-day rainfall amounts of several to many inches. In most of northern California, kind of tails off in southern California. And the 7-day rainfall forecast is just much as how it's been every day for the last 2 weeks, with several to many inches That extends down because one of these follow-up storms is going to bring more rain to San Diego, Los Angeles, and most of Southern California. Also, some robust precip in Arizona, where we're looking at 3/4 of an inch to maybe as much as an inch and a half plus in the central part of the state. And as far as flash flooding is concerned, let me start this again. Excessive rainfall. So they've got a slight risk and marginal risk for flash flooding from San Francisco northward. This is through tomorrow morning. Then during the day tomorrow and tomorrow night, it's north of San Francisco and a marginal risk running up the coast to Washington State. And on day 3, you have, again, marginal to slight risk from halfway between Los Angeles and San Francisco on the coast and then running northward with the slight risk up in northwestern California. So the spigots are turned on over there. Somebody mentioned to me that was it either yesterday or the day before, Santa Barbara got 7 inches of rain in 24 hours.
Wow.
I mean, there's got to be years where they don't even get 7 inches of rain for the whole year.
Right.
Can you imagine that?
Right. I wouldn't be surprised if that had happened over the last 2 or 3 years with the severe drought conditions. By the way, tomorrow, Thursday, will be the new updated drought map. And I'm going to be very interested to see how that has changed from what we have out, on the map this week. I'm sure that we're going to see a lot of places that, at one point had severe drought or maybe just going down. The downturn will be toward just exceptionally dry. It's really, really amazing of all the precipitation that has fallen out there over the last month or so.
All right, I'm trying to load some snow maps here. Oh, here we go. That came up quick. So here we go with the snowfall forecast where they've got the winter storm watches up in the northern half of Maine. It's basically 6 to 12 with the highest amounts up to in the far north with Caribou, for example, getting about 10 or 12, at least from the digital forecasts. And you've got half a foot amounts that extend down into interior Maine and also into a small portion of interior New Hampshire. You can see this is going to be mostly behind the weather system with snows along the lake fronts in southwestern New York, northeastern Ohio, and in and around Buffalo. But, flurries compared to what those two mega events that they had. And also, by the way, we've got snow forecast down the mountain chain in the Appalachians in Virginia and into western North Carolina and into northwest Georgia, Joe. They're giving me a coating to an inch or so. Not out of the question here. I actually, looking at what I saw on the models, that I probably might have some snow late Thursday night, early Friday morning here, but I'm going to Mississippi for a day, an overnight. So I'm going to miss whatever falls during the day on Friday and on Friday night. But this will mark the 4th time that I will see some snow here in northeast Georgia. We've got a coating to an inch across parts of Kansas, including Kansas City and Topeka. And you can see the snow amounts for Colorado, 1 to 4 inches in most places, also up in Wyoming. There's not really too much here in terms of snowfall. This is, by the way, through Saturday evening. And, of course, we can always fantasize about the places that have gotten already a couple of 100 inches in a few places, I'm sure. And here's some more that's going to fall between now and Saturday with up to, was that a 47-inch print? I don't know where that is in the Sierra Nevadas, but that's a 47-inch print. And Reno, by the way, looks like to the east of Reno, there are some heavy snows being indicated there, although I see a 1 print for Carson City. I don't see a number print for Reno. We have somebody on the left a comment on our YouTube video, Joe, that was from Reno, so he watches the show from that area. So I just want to acknowledge him. Here's the probabilities from WPC for snowfall of at least 2 inches. You can see it's near 100% in Maine. The pink area, or whatever color you want to call that, light salmon, I suppose, 80% or higher. The blues, not the dark blue, but the next level is 50%, and you see that straddling along northern Vermont, upstate northernmost New York, north of the Adirondacks, in fact, and then going uh, southwestward into southwestern New York, northwest PA, northeast Ohio, and then you've got probabilities extending right down the Appalachians to the North Carolina-Georgia border. So nice to see for me. And out in the west, it remains in the usual places: Sierra Nevadas, the Cascades, and on the long range, there really isn't anything to speak of in the east going through the weekend. So this is Saturday, this is Sunday, this is Monday, and this is Tuesday, and it's all in the west. High probabilities of at least 3 inches being indicated by WPC. They must be. I got to think that they must be. They must be. I don't want to use the word bored. Maybe they're happy because forecasting snow in the west in the mountains, I'm sure it has its own challenges locally. I mean, they kind of do a broad brush. They do, a great job. Snow forecasting in the east is very challenging, and I just think that they're probably kind of happy that they haven't had to do very much of it in this winter so far.
Yeah, yeah. I'm looking at the chat board, Joe, and one of the posts on the chat board from Frank Riccio. We've seen all kinds of sad stories about the tremendous amounts of rain and flooding that has occurred in California in recent days, and he said very sad to see the parents on TV of the 5-year-old that was swept away in a flood in California. I think actually that the 5-year-old was swept out of the hands of the mother, who was trying to hold on to him, and he just swept away. And they're still looking for that boy as I speak to you now. But that's got to be the saddest story I've seen so far coming out of that. Out of this thing.
This has been ongoing. This has been ongoing since Christmas or just after Christmas, and it's been. We've seen it here where we get maybe 2 or 3 storms in a row. On a rare occasion, you might have back-to-back majors. I mean, it's very rare, but it has happened from time to time. But out there, I mean, it's been every other day. It's a new animal coming in from the Pacific. I mean, I don't know how you deal with that.
I don't either.
I don't.
Yeah. Well, and I mentioned also that I've been up here 21 years, and I can't remember going so late into the season. Now, I back in the day, Renata used to provide for a landscaping company snowfall reports during the winter seasons, and I was able to find on my computer here her report from the winter of 2006, 2007, which was one of the few years where we had very little snow up here in the region. Now, this is not for Putnam Valley. This is for Ossining, New York, which is just a stone's throw to my south. But I think it could stand, pretty much for my area as well. And it says here, no sighting. This is, again, the winter of 2006 to 2007. No sighting of any snow was made until January 10th, when a trace of snow was noted. There was no snow at all in December, and right about now in the winter season, that's when a trace of snow was found or seen on January 10th of 2007. And the report says such a paucity of snow for the opening weeks of the winter season is rare and does not happen very often in the Hudson Valley. Now, again, already we had an inch or thereabouts back in early December, but this 2007, there was no snow apparently in November or December, and now the first bit of snow was a trace on January 10th of 2007. There were 21 dates when snow was noted for the winter of 2006, 2007. Of these, in 9 cases, trace amounts less than 1/10 of an inch were noted. Another 9 cases saw amounts of 1 inch or less. In only 2 cases, February 26th and March 16th, did 4 inches or more snow fall. These 2 cases produced 62.1% of the total snowfall for the entire winter season. The winter storm of February 13th and 14th not only produced snow, but also mostly pellets of sleet. So I'm saying to myself, I'm looking at this and I'm saying, would I need the snowblower on February 14th, Valentine's Day, to get rid of 3 inches of mostly sleet mixed with snow? Maybe. I might have had to break out the snowblower then. Certainly would have had to break it out on February 26th of 2007 when 4 inches fell. And then finally, on March 16th, 2007, there was 8 inches of snow. See, this is what I was just talking about. Nothing or hardly anything in January, so February. It was March of 2007 that we had finally a really significant snowfall. March 16th, the day before St. Patrick's Day, 8 inches of snow, and then a trace in April. So again, maybe, just maybe, we'll have to wait until March for something significant if we go through this month of January with hardly any snow at all.
Well, I'm not gonna debate this. There's nothing really to debate. It'll be what it'll be. We will forecast it as they come along. So rather than use the operational, I'm going to use because there's been too much volatility from run to run. I'm just going to use the ensembles here to try to figure out
Mrs. Ensembles.
Mrs. Ensembles. You know, she's very busy putting maps out, including the European ensembles and her European relative, and it's been very consistent. Here we are. I'm going out 5 days here, and it's pretty obvious what's going on. There is the trough is in the west. You've got ridging along the east coast. There's a low that's going to develop on this cold front that's coming through that the model seems to be doing more with south of Nova Scotia, which is now, kind of has a wrapped up cutoff low there. So I don't know what that does in terms of the overall pattern scheme. I don't think it really does much anything in the short term. But as we move now, this is a week from today. You still have the trough in the west and the ridge in the east. And then as we progress further, now this is a week from today. All right, this map right there, the 168 hour. That's a week from today. That is the 18th of January. So let's say that will be the day that the pattern starts to slowly break down in the west. And you see what happens here. The Pacific fire hose jet is completely cut off and gradually replaced by ridging off the west coast. And you start to see the ridge in the east kind of flatten a bit. And then eventually we actually go to a scheme where there's some troughing in eastern Canada and a broad trough in the eastern part of the United States and ridging in the west. The last date on this is on my birthday, Friday, January 27th. And there you have it on the GFS, on the ensembles. The ensemble runs have been very consistent, while the operational runs have been sort of doing all sorts of weird things. But I guess if you want to be encouraged by the more consistent European, you can be, because the European does the same idea, only I think a bit more so. With a nice trough setting up by the time we get to Sunday, January 22nd in the eastern part of the United States, and a nice ridge up in the west, and the troughing stays in the east, and the ridge stays in the west, with the last day on the European as January 26th. So today's the 11th. We got another week before the breakdown begins in the western part of the United States, and you're probably going to have to give it another 5 or 6 days after that for the pattern to evolve in whatever it's going to evolve into. So I'll say it again. The pattern's going to change, no question. Does it change into something that's going to be more favorable for snow? I couldn't tell you. Is it going to change to favor weather that's going to temperatures that are probably going to be closer to normal? I think that's probably a pretty good bet.
Okay, well, we'll see. A lot of people I know looking at these various ensemble patterns and operational models and whatever. They're kind of like, and they're rolling around in their minds or whatever like that. I mean, it's too bad there's no meteorological Las Vegas, or there's no for the amount of snow.
I bet
Is
you.
it
I bet
is
you.
it
You could.
over?
I bet you could find a betting line in England because they bet on anything over there.
Yeah. Is it over or is it under?
Yeah. No, I'm sure they got all sorts of betting lines there. I mean, they'll bet against two roaches running across a room. So here we go with the short term. Got a nice high. Actually chilled down nicely in parts of the Northeast overnight last night and this morning. That warm front is setting up. Even a little bit of mixed precip being indicated by the GFS in northeasternmost PA at the start for a brief time, and in the Catskills. And there's your low, which is going to go through Kentucky and into western New York, and eventually up the St. Lawrence Valley. The snow up in Maine, which is no surprise. And this cold, it's Joe. I'm going to tell you right now, it's probably going to wind up being colder here again, because you can see how the thicknesses are. You have a deep north-south trough here. It's going to be colder down here than you're going to
Then
get
up
up
here.
there. Yeah,
Yep.
no question. And
Have you noticed? Have you noticed, by the way, that ever since you moved down there, the weather has been like upside down, topsy turvy. You don't get hot. You don't get any 90-degree temperatures in the summertime. You get more snow in the winter than we do. It's crazy, Joe. You're making a good reason for all of us to move down your way.
Is it a coincidence? I think
Yeah.
not. Here is look at the west. You can see the next. There's a bit of a break. So what's going on now pulls up and kind of lays offshore for a little while, then starts to come back in on Friday with another surge, and then another really strong surge looks like for Saturday into early Sunday morning. And then yet another surge Sunday night into Monday. And here comes the one for Wednesday into Thursday. That might be the last one. We'll see. But in the meantime, in the east, you're going to have this low offshore south of Nova Scotia and another low that's going to come out of all this western energy. So that's going to go to the lakes. So it's another cold front. That low offshore, Joe, is going to hang around into early next week. That actually weakens this next system for Tuesday. All the rain falls apart with that because of the low offshore. And then you got yet another one that goes to the lakes. This one might be a little more significant with snow in places like Nebraska, Iowa, and Wisconsin and the western lakes. And then that goes up. And then you got yet another one that on the 18Z run takes a deepening low up to eastern Michigan with a bit of a secondary that extends out to the coast. But once again, like the 18Z yesterday, Joe, the 12Z has a more blocky look and actually this is for Sunday the 22nd into Monday the 23rd. It actually produced, if you believe the snow maps that went with this, produced a foot plus for the northern half of New Jersey, the lower Hudson Valley to Long Island, and southern New England. Which, of course, it'll be gone on the next run, which it is, because on the 18Z it's gone.
Right.
So,
well, we talked about this last night, too.
Yeah.
I mean, we said that there was something for the 20th of January, and I said, don't worry about that. It'll be gone by the 0Z run. And sure enough, it was.
Anything that the operationals are going to do going forward, as far as the surface is concerned, is pretty meaningless. I think until we can figure out what the upper air exactly is going to look like, we could speculate all day until the cows come home, and we're not going to really know very much. Frank Scalera hitting Super Chat tip jar tonight. Thank you, Frank, for doing that. So has Jason Kaplan and David Fuller, who just got home from his in-laws. Okay. Have yourself a drink.
It was a long day.
A long day. And and Frank Riccio. Thank you, Frank, hitting a super chat. He's waiting for the pattern change and hope for my first inch of snow. By the way, the snowfalls here have been, 2/10, 2/10, 2/10. So I haven't gotten 1 inch here where I am in one sitting. But we'll see if that happens Thursday night into Saturday so that I can beat you to that as well. So anyhow, I'm trying to think if there was anything else, anything I wanted to. Hey, by the way, can you see, since we have you on the screen, and you can share. I'm just kind of curious. A CPC on that experimental 3 to 4 week forecast. Can you see what they did with the? If they did anything?
Well, they only come out. They only come out with that on Friday. So this is
Oh, so that would be
more than
last Friday. Yeah, then forget about
yeah,
it.
yeah,
We already looked at that. So I thought so on Fridays they come out with it. So then we don't show it here till Sunday because
right,
we're off on Friday and Saturday.
right, right.
Okay.
But I can if you want. You can if you want me to bring up the today's 6 to 10 day. I can very
All right. So
happily.
that'll take us to the 21st. So I'm sure it's above normal. So yeah, go ahead. Knock yourself out.
Ta-da!
Well, at least half the country is below.
80 to 90%, right
Well,
here.
and by the
80,
way, this should not
90
be.
to
This is
excuse me,
not breaking news, though.
90 to 100%, I should say. 90 to 100%. Wait a minute. Let me just make sure I'm getting all this. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. No, excuse me. Pardon me. 80 to 90%, not 90 to 100%. Unless I'm not quite seeing the darkest shade. No, this is an 80 to 90%, which covers most of the lower Great Lakes, the Ohio Valley, the Tennessee River Valley, the Mid Atlantic, the Northeast, New England, everybody from the 17th to the 21st above normal. Yikes.
All right. Oh, by the way, Timothy Veltman says the 2 to 3 week experimental snowfall map is updated daily during the week. And I want to mention, too, that Joe Mayano hitting a super chat tonight. Thank you, Joe. Scrolling through all the chat comes in so fast that I missed it. But really appreciate it. Thank you very much. So what's the snow from CPC have to say?
You mean this? This is risk of heavy snow. And they're saying that there could be a slight chance in this zone here from the 19th to the 23rd of January.
Okay.
And that's
all she wrote.
And that's all she wrote. What about temperatures? Let me just see temperatures here. Well, they have, as we mentioned last night, in the southwest, a slight chance of hazardously cold temperatures, which cover Arizona, parts of New Mexico, the Four Corners, the so-called Four Corners area of the country, which also includes a small strip of southern Nevada. And as far as rain, let's see, precip. Well, they got something in your neck of the woods, Joe, for the 19th to the 23rd of January, which includes not only most of Georgia, but also Alabama, Mississippi, a good chunk of Tennessee, all the way down to the Gulf Coast to Louisiana and the panhandle of Florida.
By
That
the
again
way,
would be from the 19th to 23rd.
I don't know if you noticed. Do you see who's watching the map? Who's looking at the map right now?
No, who?
Look at the screen.
Yeah, me.
Okay.
And you, right?
Oh, so you can't see. You can't see what I have on the screen next. I covered your face up with Mrs. Bundy.
Oh, Mrs. Bundy, Mrs. Bundy. Yes, indeed.
Bless her heart.
Birder lady circa 1965.
That's right. Exactly. And, she's looking at that map with a high amount of skepticism.
Yes.
And, of course, we could always see what Carol Merrill has behind that curtain. Maybe she has the next snowstorm for the eastern part of the United States. We're starting to get giddy about
punchy.
this.
Adam
Lowe says, for the last 3 winters, I made my winter forecast by predicting the exact opposite of the YouTubers' forecast, and that has worked extremely well. I got to tell you, Adam, being a contrarian is actually a very valuable thing to be, both in weather forecasting and in stock market forecasting. And I honestly, I would wish. I mean, we're not gonna do it here, but somebody ought to take some of these long range YouTube forecasters out to dry with the endless. I mean, you think about it, they every year it's the same thing. You cannot. You have to forecast. If you don't forecast below normal temperatures and above normal snowfall in the east, you're labeled as a heretic. And if they could, they would burn you at the stake.
What can I say?
No, seriously, it's just
Yeah.
you never see. I don't think I.
In fact, there was an episode of Seinfeld where George decides to go the opposite on everything, and that ultimately ended up helping him get his job with the New York Yankees. He meets George Steinbrenner, and Steinbrenner holds out his hand and says, "Nice to meet you." And Steinbrenner goes, George goes crazy. He says, "It's because of you that the Yankees are the way they are today. They're a disgrace. They're a humiliation. Blah 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 blah." I'm sick of your macho head games. And after the end of his diatribe, Steinbrenner says, "Hire this man."
The chat comment of the night comes from Fire Truck 1988, who says, and I quote, "I will be continuing to wear the same underwear until we get a snowstorm in the Northeast."
God.
Oh God, are you going to rank of garlic after a while?
But actually, Joe, if you think about it, think about this. On Gilligan's Island, I presume that the professor, Thurston Howell III, Gilligan, and the skipper all had to wear the same underwear for 15 years, right?
Well, I mean, they could have certainly have washed it in the lagoon.
I would suppose so.
Yes.
Well.
And Christinapedia responded to that by saying, "At Fire Truck 1988, I'm glad you live far from me."
Yeah.
Every day that goes by that we don't get any snow, you're just going to have to be a little further and further away. So we are 9 likes under 100. So if you haven't hit the like button, hit the like button.
Well, Cecilia, here, this should be worth 9 likes, 9 more likes. We already got 96 here. Cecilia Hernandez mentioned about the fact that she loves mockingbirds. And when I lived in Levittown, Long Island,
mockingbirds are great.
When I lived in Levittown, we had a mockingbird at our house that used to keep Renata and I awake all night, because mockingbirds stay up through the night in the month of June, because that's the mating season for mockingbirds.
Yes.
And that's how they attract a mate. They're the only bird I know that makes noise at 2 o'clock or 3 o'clock in the morning. And one morning we were at breakfast, and my daughter, who at the time was maybe like 4 or 5 years old, sitting there at the breakfast table, and I was complaining about the fact that the mockingbirds kept us up all night. And Maria said, "Why did they do that, Daddy?" And I looked at her and I said, "Because he's looking for something." And there was like a long pause, and like Maria innocently said, "Breakfast?"
Yeah, you're right about
it. And it got us over 100. There's 112 likes.
Yes.
So.
Mockingbirds they're great birds, because they can get nasty when other animals threaten their nests, including some of the bigger birds and the raptors. I mean, whoa. I've seen them dive bomb cats, come straight down and just nail them, and dogs for that matter.
Yep.
And on that note, as it is now 8:31 Eastern Time, I think it's time to say good night on this Wednesday night. The chairman, Scott Briller, who usually provides us with a Briller Jeopardy, he's taking care of his mom. Mother Briller has had a bit of a setback, so we wish him well, and we wish Mother Briller all the best. And he'll be back soon. Just he's dealing with his stuff, his situation. So when he comes back, he comes back. And in the meantime, we will say good night, and we'll be back tomorrow night at 7:35.
Good night, all.
Nighty night, everybody.